All right, I should be recording now. So hopefully everybody can see what's on my screen. And welcome to Lecture 1. Again, I'm Professor Matthew Zimmer, and I'm going to be talking just, going through kind of the basics of entrepreneurship this lesson, and then kind of each class will cover a different, topic, and hopefully build on, each lecture will build on the last. I think I said this in my intro lecture, but I think the thing about entrepreneurship and how this class is designed and kind of what we're going to be teaching, we're going to teach a lot of content. So there's a lot of topics, and the depth of each one of those topics is pretty shallow. So there is a lot of information, and a lot of these topics can be very deep. However, just the nature of this course being an intro course and really wanting to give you a broad education, that's the nature of this course. It is a lot of information, but very shallow, okay? So if you have questions, if you're on the video, obviously feel free to ask. If something hits you later, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to go deeper into all of these topics. But once again, the reality or the design of this course is to really kind of give you that broad information, and then go from there. So I'm going to be covering kind of the fundamentals here. I will, at the end of this, go into a little more on the homework. If you've looked at the homework, and kind of there is a previously recorded video on that homework. It's from last semester, so I'll probably tweak it a little bit. That said, kind of like the homework's the same regardless of whether you watch this or that video, but I'll go into a little bit more depth at the end of this session. Okay, so let's get into it. So let me see if I can move my slide. There we go. All right. So what is the job of an entrepreneur? Well, an entrepreneur is obviously it's a fancy word for saying starting and owning your own business. And the benefits of being an entrepreneur is really there's a ton of freedom. You're running your own business. You quote unquote don't have a boss. We'll maybe talk about how that isn't true a little bit later. But obviously that's the goal. If you're in this course, you're interested in starting and running your own business in some degree. I think the other thing here is that entrepreneurs, you're inherently engaged in some amount of risk. Now, a lot of people think that the job of an entrepreneur is it's risk seeking. The reality of this job is, while you are engaged in risk, the actual job, the function of the job is to reduce risk. So at all times, what we're trying to do is identify risks and then work to minimize those risks. So how do we come up with solutions to problems that allow us to mitigate the risks that we might face? So that's ultimately kind of what the job is that we're pursuing. So some essential skills that can make you successful: creativity, like I said, risk taking, adaptability, problem solving, resilience, leadership. You'll see that a lot of these, again, if you think about that risk component, a lot of these are around like problem solving, right? What we want to be doing is always on our feet, always thinking. Problems, when you find a problem, another way to think about it is really thinking about it as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to be nimble, be, quote unquote creative. When we say be adaptable, it means, don't see something as a roadblock. See something as a challenge, but a challenge that can be overcome. So, being flexible is really important when you're pursuing this. Nothing is ever going to go as predicted. It's always going to go off script, and you can definitely count on it. So let's talk about identifying opportunities and mitigating risk. So, these are very simple bullet points, but we want to identify things that that need to be solved. So when we think about there's a slide later in here, but what we don't want to be solving is we don't want to be solving these things that are just a new, annoyances. We want to be solving things that are like real problems, like people that really that cause pain in people's lives. And when I say pain, I don't mean like little nuisances. I mean like there's actual physical pain. What that might be emotional pain, but like that gets felt. So we're trying to identify gaps in the marketplace that other people are not pursuing, and we want to think about how do we fill those gaps? How do we fill those needs? How do we produce something that allows a person to hurdle from one side to the other? Hold on, I've got a. All right, sorry. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to do. We're looking for gaps in the market. Some things that can help is paying attention to emerging trends and technologies. So, we're hearing a lot about AI today. Clearly, that's like an emerging trend. That could be good. That could be bad. If you think about things like NFTs or blockchain, those were emerging trends that didn't, or at least at the time, didn't pay off. Maybe they'll come back, in vogue and be something in the future. Maybe they won't. But, you can, if you are able to kind of gravitate to an emerging trend, you're able to save yourself a lot of heartache. If, let's say, if you're in the food business and for some reason, if there's like an emerging trend, maybe there's a lot of talk and discussion about caffeine, being detrimental to health or something like that. Like if you're in the coffee business and that's the case, you're working against a trend, and that can be hard to overcome. So, those are things to consider. It doesn't necessarily mean don't enter that business, but paying attention to those things is important. And then kind of lastly, obviously listening to feedback, customers, shareholders, stakeholders, is a good word. People that have a stake, an interest stake in your business, whether it's a customer, whether it's an investor, whether it's, frankly, like a significant other. They can have, valid opinions because they're invested in you and your business. Some common pitfalls. I would I think all of these honestly break down into overconfidence. I think having a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, can constantly double checking, constantly just thinking about, again, those worst case scenarios, those those things that might pop up into the future, and then kind of like thinking into the future about what the problems may be, and then having kind of solutions ready to go. That can be a really good way for you to vet your business as you build it. So I'm not going to try to go through every bullet on these slides. These are more about talking points for me to deliver information to you. So apologies if some of these are a little bit dense. But anyway, so just be careful not to think that you know everything. And then, financial management, staying on top of the business, obviously. The dollars and cents is super important. We will get into that later, talking about, the finance side of entrepreneurship, what's important to pay attention to. Obviously, if you're, a lot of people will be starting a business solo, which means you can only pay so much attention to any one piece. So we need to manage our finances, but obviously we can't spend all of our time doing that. There's all sorts of other aspects of the business you need to pay attention to. So, how do you do that without killing yourself working too hard is an interesting topic. So like I said before, our goal here as an entrepreneur is to mitigate risk. It's not to chase risk. It's actually to identify risks and work to lower those risks. So conducting market research, having a business plan that we can go back to and look at, and compare how our business is operating to what we thought it would do, super important. Having, as you start to grow, having a diverse team that can bounce ideas off each other is super helpful. And then this last thing, like cash is a way of mitigating risks. It allows you to take chances that you might not otherwise be able to. And if you're able to do that in a way that doesn't put your business at risk, obviously that gives you, a leg up. So thinking through, if you're able to secure funding, that can allow you to think about your business different. If you're not and you're self-funding, you're going to need to tailor that business. You're going to need to tailor your profit model such that you can do the things that you want to do within your financial model. When we're talking about a solo business, policies and procedures are less important. That said, even if you're when you're dealing with customers, if a customer knows how to address your business, knows what the process is for getting a purchase order or something like that, it lubricates things, it makes things a little bit easier. So I think this is maybe a little bit further down the line of a lot of what we're talking about in this course, but thinking through if there is a way to set up some processes to make things easier to get into, that stuff's important. All right, so let's talk about how we start a business and kind of what are the steps that we're gonna go through. All right, so like I said previously, when we're starting a business, what we first want to do is we want to look for problems that need solving. Now, this is super important. Most of the time, the way people start businesses is they actually come up with the solution first. They're enamored by their thing. And what then happens is then you chase a problem and you start trying to identify problems that your solution fills. That's very dangerous, mainly because you're not actually working, you're not working on the thing. You're not working on refining the thing to solve this problem that you've identified. So starting with problems kind of gives you a little bit of a clearer path to how to solve things. So even if you know an industry, let's say there might be some people in kind of the childhood development side of things. Let's say you want to get into child development. That's great. So knowing what your skill set is, knowing where you want to operate, know where you can operate, knowing where you think you can make a difference, that's important. So kind of centering yourself is important. However, saying I'm going to start a at-home childcare business, well, that's starting with the solution. Now, maybe that ends up being the right thing to start. However, stepping back and saying, hey, what is this market that I've identified actually need? Why am I starting this business? What am I trying to fill? That'll give you a place to then think about, how do I, what are some other features? What are some other things that I might add to this business to really truly address the problem that my market is having, versus just saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, and kind of just, foraging ahead. So be careful about, just jumping to solutions. We want to start thinking about problems. Again, then we identify the gaps in the marketplace, which is kind of part of how we identify our problems. All right, and then we kind of covered these other two. Make sure you got your ear as you're kind of working on that problem, and you're starting to identify who might be a purchaser of this. You really want to listen for that initial feedback even before people are your customers. Just when you're out doing that research, you're out thinking about things, really listening is super important. So that's where we're starting. We're starting with problems. We're not starting with solutions. there's a whole bunch of different types of organizations that you can start. And this is actually, it's interesting. A lot of people pop to this early, so that's why I kind of put this early. A lot of people think the way you start a business is you file an LLC or something like that. I've said, becoming a CEO is actually the easiest job in the world. All you need is $800 in the state of California, and you can file an LLC and make yourself CEO. It's very easy. Generally, you don't need you don't need like your legal entity structure for quite a while. Sometimes there will be like licenses depending on, again, the type of business you're going into, that maybe you may be required to file certain things, but generally you can just start. You don't need any legal entity or legal coverage until you kind of get down the road a fair amount. There are lots of businesses where you'll never need it. Having some sort of insurance policy for one of the things that like an LLC does, it'll cover your corporation or a C Corp or an S Corp. It'll protect the corporation from a lawsuit or something like that. Well, you can get insurance coverage that does the same thing, and potentially it could be cheaper and easier to facilitate than getting a corporate structure. So depending on the business, these different types of organizations are important. If we're just starting out, my advice is to just start. As a sole founder, you can start moving your business forward. You can start working and getting, customers, and at some point maybe a corporate structure is important. But day one, it's definitely not what you need to be thinking about. Now, there's lots of different types of ventures that we can start. So I'm focusing on kind of that solo bootstrapped, which means it's basically self-funded. We're putting a product out there, we're selling a product profitably, and kind of that works itself over time. There's lots of different types of businesses. Raising venture capital. You can have a local or a national venture cap business. You could have a global enterprise. These are different styles and scales of businesses. A lifestyle business is something designed to kind of create a lifestyle for yourself, and kind of create a comfortable living. Social ventures are more common these days, having some sort of social tie-in, whether it's environmental impact or something like that. These are kind of different styles and flavors of companies, and they just they kind of change maybe where you need to put focus. So if you're an organization that needs to raise capital, you're going to need to put time towards doing that. If you're not, you don't, and you can put some time towards other things. So just thinking through maybe what type of business, not only A, do you want to start, but B, like, are you starting? So if you're starting a business that requires having capital, and you don't have that money personally, you're going to need to think about, well, how do I structure this so that those people that, so that I can attract people to give me capital to start that business. So just thinking through, what is the business you're starting? What are the capital needs? Is the business designed and structured so that you have the best chance possible to bring that capital in if it's needed? Those things are important. If having a social angle helps facilitate bringing in capital, you want to be truthful and honest to yourself that that's the case. To me, I think that's okay if you can create social change, but also provide a investment return. That can be a big win. So lots of different types of organizations, kind of knowing and understanding what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it is really important. So that kind of gets into like funding a business, and like I said before, bootstrapping is you're self-funding, you're doing it by yourself. That can come in two parts. One, just having kind of like that initial investment that you're putting in the business to get it started, and then generally utilize profits from kind of the sale of your goods or service to continue that growth. Outside of that, we're really talking about bringing in outside capital. Um, that can be, friends and family or angel or venture capital. All these are just different sizes and scales of dollars. But basically, the same mechanism. We're asking other people to give us money for some sort of ownership of our business. It could be debt potentially, so equity versus debt financing. Equity, obviously, we're selling a piece of our company. Debt, we're basically promising to pay people into the future. But it just depends on who you're borrowing from. And, the different sizes, the different scales, the different relationships you have with these people, the tougher, I guess, it gets to get capital from them. Bank loans are pretty tough right now for a small business. So, if you know a banker that can help you, go for it. But I haven't personally had success with that nowadays. Crowdfunding is a new one. Obviously, if you have kind of a viral product, doing some sort of crowdfunding on even a local scale can be really, really good. If you have like a social enterprise where people can get aligned with, your mission, crowdfunding can be a really interesting way to get some initial funds in to start your business. But the reality is, there's going to be some amount of cash burned to get a business off the ground. It's basically impossible not to. So thinking about where those funds come from, frankly, how you can minimize those funds. A lot of the times when we talk about product development, we want to think about what are the features we can eliminate to kind of reduce the amount of cash we need to get this thing started. That's super important. This is just getting cash can bring in it's cash. Having cash in the business is a great opportunity. It allows you to move the business faster. It does have negative sides, so it does bring additional eyes onto your business. So I can tell you, when I've raised capital for my businesses in the past, frankly, it created an environment where I wasn't super happy. And have therefore, when I've started subsequent businesses, tried to do as much, self-funding, and again, figuring out how to trim that business down to something that's super manageable, and that was better for me. Again, it depends on who you are as a person, the type of business, but really think about, I think there's a lot of like social media pressure to build the next, biggest business in the world. And there's a lot of pressure to kind of move into, raising cash, and that can help grow the business. It's awesome, but it also has some negative sides. So really just, thinking about how that changes your business. The minute you sell a share of your business to somebody else, it's no longer your business, it's our business. So just be, cognizant of that before you go down that line of thinking. Yeah, so I'll skip this slide. You can read this, but that's kind of my thoughts on seeking capital. So let's talk about just kind of the life cycle of an organization. As an organization, there aren't necessarily these really strict, phases. These are all gray, right? So one flows into the other, and who's to say, where exactly you are? But generally, there's kind of some stages that you move through. One is that idea generation. It's creating, what am I going to do? I want to start a new business. What the heck am I going to start? That's where, maybe most of the people in this class will be right now, of really thinking about what do I want to start? What am I going to be starting? So that's idea generation. Once we've kind of got an idea, what we do is feasibility. And what we're looking for there is really, looking at the evaluating the potential of the business. So we're doing market research, we're talking to people, we're creating business models. right? We're doing all that type of stuff. And what we'll end up doing is a lot of times you'll be pinging between kind of idea generation and feasibility, and then you're going to take a step back and you're going to take a step forward. And you want to think about these things as kind of, you're always ratcheting up, right? So just because you come up with an idea and you do feasibility and it kind of fails your feasibility analysis, and then you go back to idea generation, you shouldn't think about like taking a step back. It's ratcheting, right? So I do my idea generation, I did my feasibility, and it failed. Well, I didn't come back here. What I did is then my next idea generation was built on that feasibility. So I'm ratcheting up versus moving backwards. So we're always moving forward, we're always learning, we're always succeeding, regardless of if you feel like you're failing or an idea fails. That's always success. That's how we look at it. Once we've kind of passed that feasibility, then we're planning. So we're getting into developing that business plan, developing that launch plan. Then from there, we're launching into the market. Once we're in the market, we're growing our business, and then we're exiting. Or maybe you're not exiting, depending on the business you build, and maybe you stay and grow and mature for forever. Exit is kind of the last phase where you're getting out of the business, and in your lifetime, that may never happen. It may happen. Who knows? But those are kind of the life cycles. So a lot of time and effort, is put into these upfront steps. Once you have a business that's working, man, that is the fun part, right? That's I know what I'm doing. I know what my business is, and I'm going to concentrate on, keeping it moving. So be cognizant. There's a lot of time and effort spent on these initial steps that your time is going to get burned because a lot of things won't work, and eventually we get to the point where something does. But we're always moving forward, regardless of whether or not our outcomes are successful. As we're putting together, these plans, we want to recognize that the economic landscape has big effects on kind of what we can do, what we should do, where we should be putting our efforts. So obviously, things like interest rates and these macro effects can create challenges and affect what we want to do or are able to do. It's often said that like a negative market is actually a great time to start a business because there's less competition, there's less people that are willing and able to kind of push through that. So while it may not feel like you're making as much progress, if more people are dropping out and you're staying in the game, there's a higher chance of success. So definitely, like, the outside environment does affect what we're doing. So again, it's not like keep your head down and don't worry about the outside world. We want to know what's going on, but we always want to keep moving forward. I talked about trends a little bit before. Again, just knowing what's going on can really it can help flavor your business. So if you can ride on to kind of a large trend that's happening and get some wind in your sails, that can make it a heck of a lot easier to move through some of these steps faster. So let's talk about some common mistakes when it comes to starting a business and maybe why you need to be aware of these. So failing to conduct market research. So a lot of these, I'm going to say, they kind of come about because people want to jump to solutions versus thinking about problems. You're going to hear me say that so many times in this course. So failing to conduct market research. So once we've got that idea, not putting in the relevant time, to go talk to people in the market. If we've got a food product, not walking into the grocery store and talking to the store manager about whether or not our product our product idea is interesting. You need to put the time in versus just jumping into the marketplace and trying to sell. Overestimating what we can do. So being too overly optimistic, not, accounting for the time that things, take. Not setting those ratcheting steps appropriate, can lead to a lot of burnout. Hiring the wrong people. So, there's it's super common to, feel the need to, once you get overwhelmed, hire somebody. And, that if you hire the wrong person, it takes several months to realize that. It takes several months to fire somebody, and all the time you're bleeding cash. So hiring the wrong person is a very good way to kill a business. So you want to be super careful when you start bringing outside people into your business, and make sure they're not only well aligned with the organization, but also that they actually fill a need that you need. A lot of the times, as an entrepreneur, you'll know you're overworked, and what you end up hiring is you kind of end up hiring somebody that you sort of end up micromanaging. So you end up hiring somebody with this work that you sort of need to do. And I know for me, it's very easy to hire somebody to do the work that I don't want to do. The reality is the work that I don't want to do is probably the work that I should be doing, because it's the most value to the business, and it's also the hardest stuff. So while it's really hard to give up things, you generally, the things that you are you've mastered maybe and kind of know how to do and can inform somebody exactly how to do it, that's generally what you want to give away, and then focus on these other areas of the business that are uncertain. Failing to adapt, obviously, again, that's, staying nimble, staying on your feet. Having your head down is never a good thing. So really, being aware of what's going on and being capable. Last, financial management. Again, we've got lots of balls in the air, and we need to stay on top of our finances. That doesn't mean that, things won't fall through the cracks, but we want to know what's going on in our business. So you're going to need to figure that out for you. I know for me, I look at cash. So I look at my bank, and I have an understanding of what I think should be in there. And if I check it and it's different, I got a problem. So that's how I manage, a small business personally. You need to come up with something that works for you, that allows you to have a general sense of what's going on without investing too much time. We're going to lay it all out there yet again. So focus on problems before solutions. And again, I've got another slide in here to talk about that in a second, but I'm going to hammer it home. Focus on problems, focus on problems, focus on problems. We don't want to focus on symptoms, which are little things that you hear. A lot of times, if you couple multiple symptoms together, it will actually create, a problem. One example of this I like to talk about is, probably heard an example of Henry Ford. I think the quote from Henry Ford is something like, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have told me faster horses. If you think about all the different symptoms that, if you had talked to somebody at the time of a horse and buggy, they would have said, well, the horse doesn't get me where I need to go on time. It's smelly. I need to stable it. There's all these symptoms of kind of the horse and buggy. And, if you couple those together, what Henry Ford identified was, these weren't actually the problem. The problem was the horse. And if you get rid of the horse and you replace it with the engine, all these problems or all these symptoms go away. So the problem's the horse. Get rid of the horse, we're good to go. So that's kind of the way to think, rather than, hearing all these things as different problems. How do you group them together into a real, concrete problem? So this is kind of, this is how I think about, how to think about a problem first or solution second mentality. What we want to think about is we've got our solution in the middle, and spiraling around it our problem, our customer, and our market. Okay, so our problem is obviously what we're trying to solve. Our customer is who we're trying to solve it for, and our market is basically who and how we can sell it. Okay, and these three things are pieces to our puzzle that, what we're selling, what it's solving, who we sell it to, and how we sell it. Those are the pieces of our puzzle that we're trying to solve. And the problem, customer, and market really circle around the solution. And I kind of like to think about it as a spiral that kind of goes up. Because as we're working on our solution, we're gonna think about we're gonna start we can tweak things. Okay, so we can tweak our customer, we can tweak our market, we can tweak our problem, we can tweak our solution, and these things are always kind of building on top of each other and changing and informing each other. And as we change one of these things, what can happen is basically we get a new experiment that then we can go out and test and say, hey, did this work? Did it resonate? Did it produce the outcome that I thought it would? So think about, the problem, the customer, and the market are really spiraling around your solution. Okay, and that solution, if we identify that first and then go out and try to figure out if we have a problem, it's really hard to get into this iterative nature about, thinking about, do we have the right solution for what we're trying to solve for? So that's the way that I think about it. That's the last slide I have here. I'm going to share another tab that might be helpful here. So if you come to my website, which is zimmers.com, and you go to resources and then building for profit ebook. So some of the content that I pull from the lectures will be found here. And if you come to this lesson 2, the solution circle, there'll be a little bit more information in depth on kind of how to think about this concept. So just as a heads up, if you're interested in thinking about how to think about a solution second approach, there's some good information here that maybe can help you get your head around how to think about this a little bit easier. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to get into talking about our intro slide and what the homework is. As I said, kind of in the first introduction lecture, some of this material is related to the slide, some of it isn't. My hope is that it informs you, it helps you think about these things, but it isn't necessarily directly related to our homework. But let's get into our introduction slide here. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to, part of the point of this course is to create a pitch deck, right? And what our pitch deck is a kind of graphical representation of what our business is. And the goal of it is to kind of have one place for all of the information about what our business is, who is it serving, how is it serving them, and give a look and feel flavor to the business. So that's what we're going to be developing over our time here to give you kind of something once you leave this class, something that can really be actionable and help you grow your business. So the first place we're going to start is with our introduction slide. So I just clicked on, I'm showing this, right? Yeah, okay. So I clicked on the sample pitch deck in the modules, and this is what comes up. And you can see there's the whole slide deck in here, but I'm just concentrating on slide 1. And what we want to put together is there's kind of a couple components here. One, we want to create a brand for our business that describes it. So this business is called Sprout House, with the tagline "Let Their Roots Grow," something to connote like, what is this business? What is our mission, right? Just something very simple. And we've got some imagery here of, somebody sitting in a field with a couple kids. So it's clearly like a hands-on. There aren't a ton of kids right here, so like it's one teacher with two, students, and it's, so clearly it's trying to connect with, like, okay, what can I expect from this business? So one, we put some work into, a logo and a tagline. Two, we've got some imagery to connote what our business is. And then lastly, we've got a one sentence, very short, why am I blanking here? Statement, sorry, on just, saying very succinctly what our business is. So this is an at-home childcare. So it's at-home childcare prioritizing outdoor play and nature-based learning in the Mira Mesa area. Okay, so very succinct. We know that it's childcare service. We know, what the flavor of that childcare service is. It prioritizes outdoor play and nature-based learning, and it's in the Mira Mesa area. Now, there's not everything in there, right? It doesn't cover pricing. Maybe you can get a sense of around pricing based on, some of the imagery or the brand or something like that. But this doesn't have to cover everything. It's just supposed to connect with the business and kind of give a very simple flavor around, what the business is. Okay. So this is what we want to put together this week is our cover slide for our pitch deck. Again, the components on the pitch deck are one, an image that shows, kind of what the business is, a brand and a tagline, and a simple one sentence utterance, I guess, of what the business is. So really, this is our very succinct elevator pitch of what this business is. Now, there's a couple tools that can help you with this. So, if you're, if you're in education right now, there's a lot of professors that might be telling you not to use AI services. I think for this type of work, AI services are the perfect tool to use. So, using a tool like ChatGPT or something like that to, describe your business in a paragraph, and then asking it to, give you 3-5 sample, one sentence pitches or one sentence descriptions on that business is a really good way to refine, this type of information. Asking it for what are some, here's the business I'm trying to create. What are some potential brand names? What are some potential taglines? What's some imagery that might, help me, convey the business. Really good tools when it comes to just fast iteration. Like, I cannot stress it enough. I really think these tools are powerful and really highly recommend you using them. This pitch deck was created, using those tools in part. So, I'm a strong advocate. So that's what we're going to be putting together. Once you've done this, obviously you're going to post it online, and then what I want you to do for our, let me go back to here. So in our modules, so that's what you're gonna paste you're gonna post your slide one. That's all we're doing is just slide one. So you post that in the intro slide, and then our pitch and critique. What you're doing is you're just pitching your business. So you're gonna take 30 seconds, and I just want you to start telling people what your business is. Now, again, if you don't have a business, you're going to need to come up with a business idea. We will use this for the 8 weeks. Doesn't mean that it can't change over the course of 8 weeks, but this is a starting point. So, so what we're going to do is a simple under 30-second pitch, something like, so, hi, my name is Matthew Zimmer. My business is called Sprout House. Sprout House is an at-home childcare business prioritizing outdoor play and nature-based learning for customers in the Mira Mesa area. We focused on premier learning in public outdoor spaces to help people with, mid to high levels of income, and they have a mentality of they want their children to be learning in outdoor environments and outdoor-based subjects, something like that. So again, it's nothing too complex. It's just get it out of your mouth, get it down, share it, and then what we're going to do is we'll do a little bit of back and forth with some critiques where your students can say, hey, I understood this, I didn't understand this. And over time of doing this 8 weeks in a row, you'll get better. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a pitch deck, you'll have your pitch, and you'll be on the road to, getting your business launched. Okay. I'm just noticing now that I've got old due dates, so I'll change those due dates. The due dates on the actual module are correct, so just follow, February 6th basically for these items being due. So I think that's it for today. I guess I know I've got a few people on the lecture. Are there any questions before I close this session out from anybody that's in the room?
Hi, Professor. I'm just wondering the pitch, right, or the slideshow. Does it do I change it depending on the feedback, or I'm gonna stick with it, like the first page, the introduction.
Yeah. So you're saying, so like week 2, obviously we're going to be working on slide 2, which is different content than slide 1. So I think the question is maybe, so in week 2, should you go back and reintroduce some stuff into your introduction slide? Is that kind of your question?
Yeah, because you have feedback, right, from the discussion. Do I take those into account, or I'm just going one?
Yeah. So here's what I'd say. So the homework on week 2 is going to be slide 2. So I'm not going to go back and look at your slide 1. You've already submitted slide 1. You're done. Now, obviously, the goal is to have a a good pitch deck by the time you complete it. So I think it's like whether or not you go back and kind of refine, it's kind of on you. So I'll be looking at slide 2, but if you want to end up with a good work product that you can actually utilize, I would say yes, you probably should go back and refine. However, I won't be grading that. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Same thing kind of with the pitch. I guess the pitch kind of builds itself a little bit. The pitch maybe naturally kind of refines. So that's maybe a little bit different. So I think from that feedback, you'll naturally refine it because you're going to be saying sort of the same thing every week. So that one's a little more, the iteration is maybe a little more baked in. Anything else? Cool. Just the last thing, maybe these are the types of homeworks, like literally, you can spend 5 minutes on this. You can spend 5 days on this. You don't need to get too stressed about these things looking perfect. A logo doesn't need to look perfect. Find something that you think works and go with it. I'm not grading on whether or not you have the best artistic capabilities in the world. So don't get lost in that. We're trying to convey meaning. Some people are going to be able to do this easier than others. Don't get lost in it needs to look perfect. That is not the point at all. The point is to put ideas down and move forward. The hardest thing about starting a business is starting a business. Most people get lost. They ask the question, how do I start? And they never just move forward. Just start. And I promise you'll do just fine. Okay? Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions, you can always go on my website. If you go to the homepage, you'll see that I've got this enter office on. When I'm in the office, that button will show, and you'll be able to. That means I'm sitting in front of my computer. You're happy to bother me anytime you see this. If not, schedule an appointment. Happy to meet with you anytime. And yeah, we'll talk to you next week. Take care.